like stupid responsive. The graphics fit the style of the game, so they didn't have to be outrageous and amazing, like, you know, super photorealistic. They didn't even go in that direction all the time. I mean, you look at like Devil May Cry 1 and even Devil May Cry 3. It wasn't photorealistic. It just looked good for Devil May Cry. It was Devil May Cry. It was its own thing, you know?
Yeah.
And nowadays, everything, even House of the Dead looks photorealistic now. And it's like, why? It doesn't have to. It was its own thing. Everything looks like it's the same. Everything looks like it could take place in the same universe, except for those handful of games, kind of like Anthem and kind of like, what's the other one? Like Gears of War. Like those all feel like they're their own thing. But everything else kind of feels like there's this one homogenized design aesthetic that's all across, you know, all the games, you know, all the Call of Duty games, all the Ghost Recon games, you know, or Tom Clancy games, I guess I should say. Grand Theft Auto, they all have similar aesthetics to them. So it's like, I don't get it. Like, it's not, it's just not, it doesn't, nothing is, how do I put this?
Like, then people aren't taking enough artistic license.
Well, there's
with the look of the games.
Yeah, like, with the ability, or with the fidelity of graphics that we have now versus what we had before, it's a given that games should look awesome. They should automatically just look amazing. But being that that's the case with graphics, the gameplay should be so fucking addictive and so fucking fun, and we're not getting that. I mean, everything almost plays the same. And it's funny because when you hear reviews about some of these games, people will say shit like, this game plays like shit. It's so sluggish. And then you play it and it's like, nah, it plays like 10 other games I could name off the top of my head. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like there's anything that original anymore. Like, they're not pushing for those kind of things. It's like literally everybody's trying to do the same shit. That's just not for me. I mean, like as soon as I started noticing the amount of shit you have to download to get a simple game that you already paid $60 for to play, they can have it. They can have it. I'm good. I don't know that. Like, I look at my like PS4 and I only have a handful of games, and then I notice like the reason why I stopped playing is because I have to sometimes sit through a 2-hour download or something. I'm like, dude, I only have so much time from work and my kids and wife and, you know, adulting to actually sit down and play a game. And I got to spend, you know, periodically, I got to spend 2-3 hours downloading shit that will stop me from being able to download other games if I want to. Fuck that. That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that last PSN download took quite a while.
3 hours, man. 3 hours.
It didn't take me that long, but it was longer than it usually is.
For most people, it was like 2 to 3 hours.
A half hour. It took me about a half hour.
What?
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, not everybody has super high speed internet.
They said in the download that it was a 2 to 3 hour download. So yeah, I don't know. You must really have some seriously good internet, because that shit. Yeah, I left mine in rest mode overnight. Yeah, overnight just to get it to download, because I was like, I'm not gonna sit there and wait for this like during the day. I was like, nope, no way.
That's the other thing. I wish they would let us know when they're going to have an update, so I could just leave it in standby that day.
Yeah,
because I always turn my PlayStation off. I never leave it in standby mode unless I know I'm doing something and I'm going to come back later, or it's downloading something or whatever.
Well, I put it in rest mode because I knew, like, ODC had told me that the reason why I was having problems with the game was because the issues I was having were issues that other people were having, and this next update was supposed to fix that. And I still have some of those issues. So I was like, you know, I eventually I was just like, fuck it, whatever. apparently it's just like we don't have a unified bandwidth, so I'm going to have problems, because I'm not on the same floor as my modem. It's not powerful.
Yeah.
My signal's not powerful enough. I need a signal booster. So I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna actually look that up right now. It shouldn't be that expensive, but I didn't write down anything either. So yeah, we are. Welcome to Off Our Brains. What is this? Episode 30. 34, I think. Let me see. It shouldn't take me long to figure this out. This is episode. Where you at? Come on. 35. The last one with Castlevania was 34. I should know this before I start. My bad. God, this is terrible.
That's why it's off our brain.
I know, right? Well, it seems like every end of the year is some kind of transformation or some kind of change taking place in my world. So it's been stressful, but yeah, we saw just about everything. All the good shit. We saw Bumblebee. We watched Aquaman. We also watched Into the Spider-Verse, and there's one more. Oh, Voltron. Yeah, the final season of Voltron. So I don't know. In some way, shape, or form, we're going to talk about all of those or some of those. Maybe we could try to get through all of them.
Yeah, I haven't seen Bumblebee yet, but
okay. So then I'll just save that. I won't talk about Bumblebee. All I'll say is it beat the living shit, as we knew it would. It beat the living shit out of everything that came before it, but with Michael Bay and company. It's like, just forget about that stuff. Just start from there. Start from Bumblebee. And that's what, as far as I know, that was their goal. They achieved it.
But I heard there's a Transformers 6 coming out.
Really? Is it going to be called Transformers 6? Because they said,
I think so.
The studios are saying that Bumblebee is a soft reboot.
And that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, I don't believe there's a 6. That's people doing their usual.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, because
it wouldn't make sense.
They need to leave that old shit alone.
Well, and Michael Bay said he's done. He officially said he's working on Bad Boys 3. There's no 6 Transformers, official Transformers 6 following the old continuity. That shit's done. Especially when you see this movie, it's like, yeah, if they're that stupid, then I'm not giving them another red cent. I'm not paying attention. No attention. No, I'm not looking at trailers. I'm not watching videos on YouTube. Nothing. I'm giving them no attention because that'd just be ridiculous. Because it wouldn't make any sense given what they gave us. But
yeah, I mean, I saw the article, but I didn't read it, and I was just like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me either. And it seemed like the person who was writing the article was kind of a little bothered by it too, because they were like, why do another movie and when you've done this one, and are you gonna go back to doing the same BS that those other movies, those previous movies were known for? It'd be a step backwards,
Yeah. It wouldn't make sense.
It just would not be a good look for them.
Yeah, because it'd be like you learned all the things you managed to learn from the experience of making Bumblebee and seeing the unanimous, positive reception, and then you turn around and you say, fuck that, we're going to go back to the old shit. Like, nah, you want to fail if that's what you're going to try to do, So yeah, I don't see that being especially in this day and age where films, producers and the films being made are so safe. They're always trying to make sure that they can, get the guaranteed return on their investment. They don't want to take a chance. That's why we get such generic shit,
Yeah.
Like there's no way. There's just no way. But I hope that they're not that stupid. But we can start with let's start with Spider-Verse since we had a lot. Or no, let's start with Aquaman.
All right, let's start with Aqua Boogie.
Aqua Bro. It exceeds expectation, in my opinion.
Way exceeds it. Like, it's better than Wonder Woman. Like, I know people were saying that before, but now actually having seen it, it is like better than Wonder Woman.
I think aspects of it are better than Wonder Woman. I won't say the whole thing is. It's like Wonder Woman had the like the action sequences were on point. The like the characterization was super on point. Um, I guess maybe yeah, it is better because the villain. No, because I was about to say the villain, and then I thought about it, and yeah, you're right. The villain for Wonder Woman was whack, and like they were almost there, and then they dropped the ball, having him be the generic, white dude with the mustache, twirling his mustache as he chews the scenery. It was like,
Or even the two before that, the one
who
the
Doctor
super
Poison,
Nazi dude and Doctor what's her name?
Doctor
Doctor
Poison,
Death?
Doctor
Doctor
Poison.
Yeah, like there's that part when they trap all those people in the room and they throw in the gas mask,
Uh huh.
and then they're like cackling like generic evil villains. Like the shit made me laugh because it was kind of funny. Like it was funny for kind of the wrong reasons because it's like we're being evil and
Yeah.
they're
But I think
like
that's intentional. You're supposed they are those kind. I mean, they're Nazis. Like, come on.
yeah.
Like that's literally that's the characterization. They were doing cowardly shit and laughing about it like it's something to be proud of. So you're supposed to hate them. So I mean, it fit the narrative of the film. I just think Aquaman had more like they had an iconic villain and they represented him in the most iconic way. Whereas Wonder Woman had an iconic villain who's supposed to be like this amazing force of, I mean, he's the fucking god of war, and they didn't do shit with that. You know what I mean? Like he was so generic. So yeah,
Yeah, honestly, I every time I watch that movie, when it gets around to that part, like that, the very end of the third act, and they're fighting,
I know. Just rewind
I
to
always fall asleep. Like I don't know what it is. Something about it always puts me to sleep. It happened to me in the theater when I was watching on HBO Go. I kept nodding off, and I'd
yeah,
wake up, and she'd be like wrapped up in metal, and I'd be like, "Oh fuck, I gotta rewind it," because I missed all this. And it just kept happening. I'd fall right back asleep. It was always
yeah.
in the same spot.
It's
I
the
don't know what it
wackest.
was.
It's the wackest part of the movie, to be honest. But Aquaman didn't have that. I was immersed and engrossed like the whole time. You know what I mean? Like everything was interesting. The world building was interesting, and I read a review. I don't know if it was the Hollywood Reporter. I can't remember, but you remember I found it when we were looking for the release date, and
Yeah.
someone said it was waterlogged with exposition or world building or something, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here! It's like you were
Somebody trying to be funny.
yeah trying so hard to make that pun, about it's Aquaman, so waterlogged has to be somewhere in the story. Get the fuck out of here! It all made sense. You learn how big the kingdoms of the sea actually are, and how
And you kind of need that because, let's face it, not everybody knows about Aquaman.
not
So you have
everybody.
to explain it.
Most people don't know about Aquaman, including the person who wrote that fucking lame ass review. Like they clearly didn't know, and instead of taking the time to learn, they're trying to be sarcastic about shit. Sucking their own dick. It's like, get out of here, man. You should take the time to learn instead of just making fun of some shit. That's getting old. Like we get it. You're online, anonymity. Other than in this case, he was an actual. Quote unquote reporter, and it was all filled with bias. Like I don't know. I wasn't feeling his perspective because it didn't sound like a fair estimation. It's like when Movie Bob, to make himself feel better, constantly lets you know that he thinks that superhero films are loud and dumb. I'm like, they're not all dumb. So saying shit like that is not, it's almost unnecessary.
And wouldn't it have to be loud because it's a superhero film?
Yeah,
It's like watching a kung fu movie and saying, "Man, there's just too much martial arts in this film.
yeah, exactly.
I can't watch this." And what were you there for in the first place?
Yeah, what were you expecting? So yeah, that kind of shit. I don't see that as my reviewer or critic. He has standards. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's a real critic because he thinks this shit's dumb and superheroes are dumb. So now you co-sign his fucked up view on this stuff. Like, nah, that's unnecessary. It's a superhero film. Superhero films are supposed to be a lot more boisterous and louder and over the top than a lot of other stuff. There are superhero films within, or there's superhero films that fall within other genres that are less boisterous, you know, like The Dark Knight and stuff, and the trilogy, I guess. We should only count 2 of those movies because there's no way that you can convince me or convince most people that that third film was worth a damn. That shit was awful. But, you know, that's not the over-the-top, you know, version of what we're talking about. That's the more reserved, trying to be more realistic, you know. Trying to is the key word in the sentence. Whereas, you know, Aquaman is trying to celebrate everything that comics are supposed to be. Like, we read comics because of all this over-the-top crazy shit that does not happen in real life. And, like, instead of being kind of ashamed of that stuff, the way, you know, the Nolan Batman films were, this embraced it. And that is actually really awesome to see.
Hell, I would even say Marvel was a little ashamed of it because they tried the toned down approach for a little while, and then it gradually got to to the point where Thanos snaps his fingers and half the fucking population of the universe is gone.
Yeah, I know, but even that's a watered down version of how Thanos really, you know what I mean? Like what Thanos is really supposed to be and how he really operates, you know? Like it's kind of, I don't know how you would put it, other than it's simplified so that the audience can, like a mass audience can deal with what's going on. Because if you had read,
I mean, I only bring up like that aspect as opposed to like take Iron Man 1 where they tried to ground everything.
Yeah.
In, you know, I wouldn't have expected them to go to what they did to that extent that they got to with Thanos.
Yeah,
but I kind of saw it happen gradually until like, and then you got like Doctor Strange where like they fully embraced all the magic and
exactly
the crazy imagination and the kind of things you would see happening in a comic book.
I think Doctor Strange,
and it makes sense.
Yeah, Doctor Strange was the turning point for how crazy they could go, because that's when they fully just embraced all the out there type shit. You know what I mean? That goes on in the Marvel universe with all the magic based characters and stuff. Like, I don't know. Once they introduced magic fully, it was like, yep, there you go.
Which even they should have done it when they went into space, because you know the Guardians movies.
That's true.
It's insane sci-fi, and even then it was kind of out there because there was technology that just didn't exist. Like, you know, Star-Lord would press a button on his neck, and that whole mask would come over his face.
Yeah,
and he'd be all right in space. Or they'd hit that button, and then it looked like they were wrapped in like some kind of like bubble wrap, and that would be like their spacesuit. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like
so it works, but we wouldn't have had that like maybe 5 years ago because they were too afraid to go to that extreme.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, 1,000%. They were too afraid, and audiences were saying shit like that. We heard this is the phrase that is dead. What works on the page won't work on the screen. Yeah, I don't ever want to hear that shit again. Like, no one can use that argument ever again. Ever. It's done. Especially, like, now that we've had Captain America running around in every variant of his costume. We've had Spider-Mans that have been, you know, we've had every type of Spider-Man, you know, like, visually. Cartoon accurate, comic accurate, video game accurate, you know, animation accurate, you know, like the comics. We have the comics version in live action and in animation on the big screen. Like, it's done. There's no, and Into the Spider-Verse looks like a fucking a comic book, so you can't complain anymore, you know. So
I still think it's so weird that people couldn't wrap their heads around it. Like the same people that I swear watched Harry Potter movies and watched, you know, what is it, the Fantastic Beasts. And you watch a guy step into his suitcase and go into this whole other like world. That shit you see in like cartoons where where Snoopy will go into his doghouse and he's got like a mansion on the inside and shit.
Yeah.
Like you were okay with that, but then Black Panther's whole costume fits in his necklace, and you're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like what? Like I don't understand what's going on in these people's brains.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't make any
it.
sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Yeah, people. It just that argument needs to stop. It just completely needs to disappear because now literally we've got Batman on screen that looks just like the comics. Wonder Woman looks better than the comics. So much so that they've had to actually redesign her in comics to mimic what we've seen on screen for good reason. You know, because back in the day, they would do that just because that's what was hot right now. Yeah. Now it's like some of these designs, they're redesigns, they're kind of taking the best bits from all the versions of the character and turning them into, you know, like a full-on character. I mean, shit, they made Aquaman work on the big screen. And he looks cooler on the big screen than he's ever looked in any comic ever. You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, that phrase, you know, oh, just they can't do it on, you know, they can do it on the page, but they can't do it, you know, on the screen. It's shit's dead. They can no longer use that. We've surpassed that concept, and it gets old hearing that shit all the time. You know, like seeing the way what you call it, the way that the Spider-Man movies look, seeing you know, like the animation stuff now stand next to the live action stuff, and they both look equally on point. It's just like there's no limit now. It's just a matter of can we get the scripts to match up to the, you know, the quality of the visuals. But Aquaman delivers. The visuals match the script. The you know, it feels like the comics but better because it's more, they've trimmed a lot of the fat. The fucking fight scenes were ridiculous. Like I didn't think of Aquaman in that way. Shit, Justice League Unlimited didn't even think of Aquaman in that way. You know what I mean? And to say there's a live action version of Aquaman that fights better than the cartoon version, like that's nuts. The way they handled what's his name? Orm was dope. He looked cool. He acted like his brother. I mean, like his I'm sorry, the comic book version.
Yeah.
But they fixed it by not having him be irredeemable. Like in the comics and stuff, he goes so far that it's like, kill this motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like he can't be redeemed because he just went off and was murking people just because, you know. And he's got some good reasons to be angry, but like to go off and kill people without trying to show them the error of their ways, like that's kind of jacked up. In this, he didn't get to quite do the thing that he was, you know, his ultimate goal. You're kind of catching him in the middle of his goal. And I think that was the way to go. I mean, so much so that, you know, I don't even want to jump to the end, but I kind of, you kind of have to make the point. Well, you know, if you're listening to us, we spoil shit. So, you know.
Yeah, but this movie's not out yet, though.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Fuck.
I mean, it's out in, like, China.
Yeah.
It's not here.
Fuck. Well, I'm gonna do my best. If I spoil shit, then hey, you already knew what you were getting into listening. Yeah, listening to us. This is how it goes. But he by the end of the story, he doesn't redeem himself at all. I'm not saying he does, but he's handled in a way that could allow him to redeem himself down the line. And even I really loved how they handled Queen Atlanta and Aquaman's father, Tom Curry. I like how they handled the two of them. Like it just felt like it worked. It felt legit. It didn't feel like, hey, let's take these two random people and try to force them to play off of each other, even though they have zero chemistry. Like, it felt believable, like that these two, where, I mean, I was making jokes the whole time because I was just like, yeah, you could tell. He was like, I am going to smash Queen Atlanta. Like, you could just tell, and it worked, though, because you got it. When they say this dude was in love with this woman and she was in love with him back, you could see it. It felt pretty legit, you know? And both Tamora Morrison and Nicole Kidman, they've been around for a long-ass time. You know what I mean? They've been in a lot of movies. So by now, you know, it shouldn't be hard for them to convey these kinds of things, you know? But, I don't know. I was impressed. I was.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back and watch some of the action scenes, especially earlier at the beginning, because there's some stuff they do where it's like one shot,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yo, I want to see like if Nicole Kidman actually did all that, because it seemed like her face, or maybe they digitally put her face on the stunt woman.
No. She did it.
Because it looked like it was her doing all that stuff.
She
and
did
I was
all
like,
that.
man, for her to be doing all that and not be from a martial arts background, and just be physically fit, and pulling all that off, like mad props to her, man.
Well, and it looked like, unlike the way that Zack Snyder's team has been training them to look the part, but not training them to do the shit. Like, there's more emphasis in the past movies that were helmed by Snyder on the look of the characters. You know what I mean? Like, they had Commissioner Gordon weight training, but the motherfucker doesn't throw a single punch in the film. He stands there and talks. You didn't need to put that man through all that shit because there's nothing for him to do. There wasn't a deleted scene where he was fighting. Nothing. So why even go through all that? But here, it looked like they trained specifically to do the things they needed to do. The only people who needed to be in, like, insane shape were, like, the main cast members, like Momoa and Amber Heard. Like, the rest of them, you know, and then probably Orm, Patrick Wilson. Like, the rest of them, not so much, because they don't need to. They're not doing all the stuff that everyone else is doing, you know? Freaking Dolph Lundgren, he was doing good, and a lot of people think Homeboy can't act. It's kind of funny how these old-timers that have been around since forever are showing up in modern film and doing, you know, he's been on TV, he was on Arrow, and then now he's on in a big, you know, DC film, and he was good. He did exactly what his character needed to be able to do. So, I don't know. I was impressed. What do you think? What was the thing? Damn it. God, we're going to have to spoil something. Because we got to talk about things that were amazing. You know what I mean? Like things that blew us away. Or do the best you can not to give it, you know, fully give away the information, but, you know.
I mean, I just liked the way, because there's this really big action sequence in the second act. It's I won't say where it is or what it is, but the way James Wan had, I don't know whether it was him or the action director, but the way they were intercutting between Aquaman and Mera.
Oh,
they were both involved in the action sequence, but they were in two different. They were in the same area, but they were in two different parts of that same area, and they were each going through their own thing. And the intercutting back and forth, it never felt like there's been fight scenes where like they'll cut from one fight and then they'll cut to another fight, and it feels jarring.
Yeah, like they interrupted the one fight to show you the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one it all kind of blends well together, even though they're in completely different situations, but you never feel like you're missing out when it cuts from one part of the action sequence to the other person.
Well, everything felt interesting.
Yeah,
like, I think that's the thing. It's like a lot of the other ones, it's like you're showing us uninteresting shit, and you made the other fight take a break to show us that uninteresting shit. You know what I mean? Whereas here,
or it cuts back and it's like you're continuing right where they left off.
Exactly.
Instead of like it's further down the line and they're in a totally different like part and they're doing totally different stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, what happened before all that? While we were watching the other person.
I agree.
The way he did it in this just worked so well. Um,
Yeah.
everything in this movie felt like they just kept upping the ante. They just kept upping the 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 situation because
It's
there's another
escalation.
part. Yeah,
Yeah.
it escalates like the whole scene with the because there's the different families or the different there's the different like all
Kingdoms.
the different kingdoms in the sea because
Yeah.
it's the seven kingdoms just like the seven seas. So you have the trench people and there's a whole thing with that and you're just like holy crap, how are they going to get through this? Because it seems like at any point if they screw up, they're
They're
done.
done. Yeah.
like done, like DUN, done.
Yep. Yep.
and it just you even though like it is a movie and you kind of in the back of your head you're like yeah well they're gonna make it but the whole time you're like shit they might not make it like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I
um
agree. It did feel like that. Like the ante kept being upped, and it felt like the directorial style of the film is like it's like rebellion. It's rebelling against what typically is done in these films. There was a ton of single like shots, like long single shots. You know what I'm saying?
yeah
Where like even when they're talking, instead of jumping from talking head to talking head to talking head, it was like focus on the whole group as they talk to each other, and then focus on the reaction. And then in the fight scenes, it was literally like Hong Kong style. The
mm-hmm.
camera would just pull back and watch the people do what they're doing, and there were tons of tracking shots and tons of like in camera, effects and shit. Where it was like right in front of your face, the shit happened, and the camera simply tracks what's going on. They didn't cut for every little thing that happened.
Yeah
And it was good and it was easy to read. Like I didn't find myself having a headache trying to follow all that shit when I'm in the theater. Because like with the Spider-Man movies, like we'll talk about this with Into the Spider-Verse. That was the one area that I had issues with because the action, the frame rate was strange in parts, and then the action was real choppy, but it was so fast. It's like Advent Children and a lot of the SquareSoft or Square Enix fighting like action sequences and their cinematics. It's like the whole thing is 60 frames per second, and then when the fight comes, it's like 24, and and everything is choppy and super
and they added
fast.
motion blur to it
Yeah, it's like
further
it's unnatural. It doesn't feel it's not as easy to follow. And some people dig that, and I just it wasn't for me. Not at all. But man.
also the I mean I'm sure they're using the same CG tech that they use in the Marvel movies for de-aging some of the characters, but
I
I thought
think they
that looked
used
really
more
good.
makeup.
Do what?
I think they used more makeup and less CG techniques because you could see like their faces didn't crease up at all. You know what I mean? Like kind of like they did in Ant-Man. It was more makeup and less, CG. So you actually got to see them. It felt real. Like it was especially noticeable on Michelle Pfeiffer. She was
You
de-aged
mean? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
in Ant-Man. She was
And
de-aged
Ant-Man, yeah.
with makeup and a little bit of the tech. I think that's what they did in Aquaman because man, yeah,
I don't know, man, because they de-aged the hell out of Willem Dafoe.
that's true. Maybe he had more of the tech and less of the makeup, but I know on Aquaman's parents,
Yeah,
that it was more makeup because they don't when they were with that when they didn't have all the makeup on, they didn't look that much older than what they looked in the beginning of the film. You know what I mean? Like it was less wrinkles, of course, but it wasn't like a drastic difference, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean that tech is really it's mind-boggling how good that mess is. I was reading a article I think on Gizmodo where they showed like a side-by-side comparison of just like some of their test shots for it because they were using like people I'd never seen before in it, and it was just like they showed like a thing of this lady drinking water, and she's older, so she's got the wrinkles on her lips when she puckers her lips to drink, and then they show you the side by side comparison, and they were able to get rid of all that stuff. They're able to get rid of all the wrinkles, and the skin made the skin look younger. Uh, they just made her look like 30 years younger than what she was, and
Yeah.
it was crazy. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I mean that's the same stuff they're using in these movies nowadays. It's the sky's the limit, man.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, effects wise, like there is a battle at the end of Aquaman that once you see this battle, it's like, yeah, now we got to stop saying that they can't do. This is probably the biggest battle we've seen in a DC film. It's bigger than in Justice League when Steppenwolf attacks and all the different kingdoms of Atlantis, Man, and freaking the Amazons all come together. It's bigger than that, and the scope is just like, what the fuck? Like,
it looks better than that.
Yeah, it looks better. It looks more imaginative. People are moving freely. It's not so, I don't know. It's not like 14-year-old edgy. It's more like, it feels more like adults that grew up on comics, or at least understand the appeal of comics. They're actually putting that to work in this scene. It doesn't feel like they're ashamed of any of this crazy insanity that's happening in the sequence. But yeah, Momoa, like, people need to give him a break. Dude can act. Dude is kind of a throwback to the action heroes we don't have anymore, because of all these soft moviegoers who think that every single superhero has to be an everyman. Like, we can't have action heroes because, somebody's offended at a guy who was trained to kill people actually fucking killing people. You know what I mean? Like, I hate that shit because I grew up on the old action heroes, and I get it. In real life, these guys don't exist in the regular world. They exist in, like, the military, and they exist in, like, law enforcement. Some of them are assholes.
They exist, but you don't hear about them because what they do is not classified.
Yeah, it's shit that you shouldn't be hearing about. Shit you don't need to hear about because you'll be offended, because some of it's not pretty. But in the context of fiction, you know what I mean? It's fine. When it's fiction, it's interesting because the people who are getting hurt are fictional characters, The worlds they go to are fictional. So all this nonsense where people are like, we can't have another Arnold. We can't have another Van Damme. We can't have, a Bruce Lee or a Jet Li or even a Seagal. You know what I mean? Like, nah, we need some of those kinds of characters to be in these kinds of films because those are the kind of larger-than-life personalities that help us, like, remember these characters. You know what I mean? Like, that's the appeal of these characters even on the page, is that they don't feel like people we know. They feel like people we wish we could be, and that's the point.
Yeah,
so
they're supposed to be larger than life.
Yeah. So yeah, Momoa's portrayal of Aquaman, it's dope because instead of making him pretend to be this bland-ass Aryan, superhero on that we've been seeing for years, they said, how about we just say Aquaman or Arthur Curry is you? And then we transform, you go through the process of becoming worthy to be the king. You know what I mean? Like, and it works. It's not cheesy. It's not, I mean, maybe to some people it'll be cheesy. I don't know. But it works.
I mean, they did turn down the bro-ish act. They turned some of that down.
Yeah.
He's more conflicted because the seriousness calls for him to not be like, yeah, my man, I'm having a good time. Like he's not having a good time because a lot of this is kind of over his head, and he's in over his head, and so he has to deal.
Exactly.
And that's why it works even more so than it did in like Justice League, where it just seemed like he was just at a constant party.
Yeah. Well, he just seemed like he liked battle. I think people were being too hard on him because they're like, oh, he's such a bro, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, like, if you could do some of the shit he could do, you'd be having fun, too. Especially fighting fucking aliens that you're completely supposed to destroy. come on, like it's gonna be fun. But
Yeah, I know. I was thinking of in the original Turtles cartoon, those first 5 episodes, and when they find out the foot soldiers are robots, and
yeah,
they all just start going off.
yeah,
They just start
exactly.
killing them.
They just start straight killing them. Ooh,
Yeah.
kill them.
Ooh, killing them.
Yeah, man. It's weird how people become I don't know, fans and moviegoers have become so critical to the point where it's like, do you really even enjoy this shit anymore? Like a guy, you can't have different types of personalities in these movies. They all got to act the same way. Every movie, no matter what genre it falls into, like you know how superhero movies sometimes fall into another genre, like a subgenre. You know, it could be a like the way not Jonah Hex, the Spectre short was a horror action
Yeah.
film, but it was presented with a grindhouse spin to it. Or Green Arrow kind of had that Bourne Identity kind of feel to it. You know, the Paul Greengrass, like shaky cam, espionage. You know, you're protecting, you know, this person, this delegate from this country, from these folks that work for them but actually want to kill them and take over. You know, there's all that weird espionage, you know, what's the word? Double crossing and all that craziness. And the way, God, who is Superman? Man of Steel was more of a sci-fi film than it was like a straight-up superhero film. It was literally Superman through the sci-fi lens.
Yeah.
And people were so critical about all these things. I mean, I know with Man of Steel they were critical about him killing Zod, but people have been so critical about like personalities of characters, not even taking into account what is being presented and how it's being presented. If this isn't the, you know, the what's the word I'm looking for? The camp Superman presented through a camp lens, then he's not going to be smiling and making jokes and shit all the time. You know what I mean? Like, he's literally going to be feeling the weight of the job that he has to do. But then they do it, and then everybody's like, I want him through the camp lens. But then Batman, they present him through the, you know, the noir.
The homicide lens.
Yeah, like straight up, you know, Law and Order. And everybody's like, oh, that's awesome. They don't say anything about wanting him to still have aspects of the camp, because that's the thing that people
or
bitch.
even just, you know, most people now are like, yeah, he doesn't kill. People are okay with him killing,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yep.
And brutalizing people on screen.
Yep.
Because, I mean, come on, the guy who gets his head slammed through the floor, like, he's not getting up. Like,
Exactly.
that guy's probably dead.
Yep.
Or he's on his way there.
Yep.
But because you didn't see him actually die, it's okay. You know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And people don't see how absurd it is. It's like, just go along for the ride. Understand what's being done. Go along for the ride. Understand that each of these characters are different types of people. And then it all makes sense. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel so weird. I just hate this, like, let's homogenize all the games. And we got that going on now. Let's homogenize all the movies. We already got that going on right now. The only movies that don't 100% fit in with, like, all the other generic shit, they're superhero films. Because they're telling stories we read back in the day with a twist. Sometimes. Because a lot of times they're not, like the new Hellboy that's coming out. Yeah, nah. They shouldn't have done that. But they should have just done whatever it is that Ron Perlman was talking about back in the day. Because that would have been better than what we're getting.
I guess it's just a straight out reboot.
It's like, it's a reboot with a guy who looks like Ron Perlman in the Hellboy costume with a rated R tone. Like, why didn't you just have Ron Perlman come back and, you know what I'm saying? Like, have Ron Perlman come back and just do a story that has a darker, like, you know, a bloodier tone. Because clearly that's what they wanted it to be, more violent. Fucking do it. Make it more violent. Because they saw Deadpool and they were like, shit, we could do this with our horror stuff, you know? And it's like,
which is funny because you could have always done it anyway.
Yeah. but Del Toro made it more of like a different, he straddled the fence between actual horror and more action.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of making it like, instead of focusing so much on the gore and the violence and the blood, he brought you just to the point and then cut away. You know what I mean? Like he never really showed you scenes of like full screen mutilation and shit, you know? But you know that the certain monsters like fucking tooth fairies, they like
Yeah.
skinned a dude, ate everything right there on screen, but you didn't see it all. It was like you saw just enough to get the idea that that's what's going on. Or like fuck, I'm trying to think. It's been so long since I've seen Hellboy 2, and I need to watch that again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good movie. Back when it first came out, I remember watching it so much. Hellboy 1 I saw in the theater like 4 times. But and I think I saw 2 4 times in the theater also. But there were other monsters, like all the shit that you couldn't see. Remember he had those special goggles on where you could see, you know, through the lenses you could see these apparitions, but you know, without them.
Oh hell, I'm sure Samael ate a couple people.
Yeah, true. I forgot about that. Yeah. Them too. So yeah, it was like you saw just enough to get the idea without them, you know, hanging out on that scene. You know, it's kind of like how they used to say with the way that Ridley Scott directed the first Alien. It was like what you didn't see is what scared you more than what you actually saw, because you think just based on what you've seen, you're thinking that worse is going to happen to the crew than what you actually got to see. And that's the beauty of having a director that understands when to cut away. You know what I mean? When to move the camera and let you just hear enough to let your imagination do the work.
Well, plus, it also helps when the stuff they do show you kind of blows you out of your skull. Like, I remember when I was a kid seeing the chest buster bust out of somebody, and I was just like, oh, dear God. Like, I don't ever want that to ever happen to me. So then when they do start cutting away, you still have that idea in your head. So you know, like, it just amplifies whatever you were imagining.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. Yeah, I was terrified of aliens growing up. But yeah, I think with that's why I wish they would just leave. Hellboy should have just been done. Either you do it along the lines of how Del Toro has been doing it, or you just don't do it. But I know behind the scenes there's a whole lot of other shit going on. But in Aquaman, though, going back to Aquaman, because I know that's why I started on this point anyway. The way that the film is directed, it's like they're giving you the superheroes in their element. They're acting the way like Mera and Aquaman act like the way so many versions on the page Mera and Aquaman, you know, have been. They don't feel like people trying too hard. They just feel like you know.
Or they have to be at odds.
Yeah.
Like, I'm tired of that.
Yeah, just because later on they're gonna fall in love. Like, nah, it felt like at first she was trying to throw him off to the fact that she actually gave a shit, which is why she keeps coming to him. On top of the fact that she knows his background. And then, you know, throughout the time that they're hanging out, they learn from each other, and then at the end they bang because you know that's what's going on. Like, it's not even a surprise. Aquaman's like, this is gonna be fun. He's like, yeah, because you know. But like, that's Aquaman and Mera. I just dig the fact that he's not like Thor underwater, because for the longest time writers would write him like that, and I'm like, why are you writing him like this? He's supposed to be one of us who went down there. That's the point. And I think a lot of people, like the fandom at large, doesn't understand that, like, you know, the Batman Brave and the Bold version of Aquaman, it's like outrageous, and he speaks like he's Hercules or some shit. Like, that's a joke. It's a joke on the way people assume Aquaman would be. It's not the way that he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be a dude from the surface who ended up ruling Atlantis. So literally the way Jason Momoa acts and shit, it's perfect. And then on top of that, I have to give them props. This is where we have to give Zack Snyder a lot of props for having them cast Jason Momoa as Aquaman. Because, like I said before, for how long are we going to look at the Justice League and it's going to go from, like, you know, one white extreme to the next white extreme to the next white extreme to Aryan to whatever, and then there's like the token black guy, and I don't. This Justice League doesn't even have the token black guy. Actually, they do. They have Cyborg now. I forgot. Yeah. They forced us to have Cyborg when he's not even supposed to be on the Justice League. You know what I mean? Not till much later. But, you know, according to the New 52, Cyborg has to be on the Justice League. It's weird, like, now having, you know, Aquaman be a Pacific Islander, you actually have more of a slightly diverse cast, you know? Gal Gadot is not, you know, she's not American. Yeah. She's got the accent and everything, and she shouldn't be, because Wonder Woman is supposed to be from Themyscira, which is supposed to be somewhere in the Mediterranean or something, right? It's near Greece. So it's not, she's not supposed to, I mean, she's supposed to be Greek, realistically. So she shouldn't be She shouldn't
be American.
American. She should be Greek. I mean, she's Diana of Themyscira. It's a Greek island. Yeah. Like, she should be Greek. Or at least something exotic.
Yeah, like her complexion shouldn't be the same as like somebody from Ohio,
yeah,
or New York, or, you know, it should be representative of that area.
Yeah,
you know, so you should have like the olive skin, or,
yeah,
you know, at least how it should originally be portrayed. Obviously, can't do that since Gal Gadot's from Israel.
Yeah,
she's Israeli, but if you were trying to do that, which is why, like, I think when they were talking about casting, people were suggesting people who were darker skinned,
yeah,
to play Wonder Woman, and, you know, obviously because they weren't going to go that route,
yeah,
because Hollywood, but, you know, that some people who understood that, and that's why they were choosing who they were choosing.
Yeah,
yeah, they should that was one of the reasons why when I was a kid I never really got into the Justice League, because they all kind of had that look. They all kind of had that samey look, and
that 1940s white people look. It was like, come on, guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you can do more than this. So yeah, having him be, you know, a little bit, changing it up a little bit, and thinking about the world and like different people from different parts of the world. Like, I actually thought they were going to go a step further and have the people of Atlantis look more, you know, I don't know, I don't want to say ethnic, but that's the only thing I could think of. You know, look more exotic, because it's Atlantis, it's not America. You know what I mean? Like, and they kind of did that, and I think it worked. You know, the characters didn't look, I mean, somehow Queen Atlanta and King Atlan and Orm all were fucking Aryan as fuck, but the rest of the people that you saw around Atlantis, they were like from everywhere, which was kind of cool, you know. So you know, they still got to get over that shit, but it didn't hurt this movie. It worked. It didn't hurt it. But the fact that, like, Jason Momoa, like, they let him embrace his roots 100% for the role. Like, when he's fighting and he's chanting off the movements that he's doing, you know what I mean? Like, did you see that? Like, when he pulled the in the beginning of the movie, he did it when he pulled the pipe off the wall and he spun it around, and he said something similar to what's his name? What was the main character's name in Mark of Kree?
Oh, geez.
Rao. Was his name Rao?
Yeah, that's it.
Rao, maybe. You know, Rao would say those things. I gotta look the words up again. But, you know, he would have, for each kill, he would have, like, he'd do a movement and there'd be a name for it, you know? And the narrator would scream it over the screen as you do the move, and then you do another kill and it would be another one, because it was like the 4 of your steps, if you did 4 kills, you know, in a row, had a name. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I mean, barely, because I never really played it. I mostly watched you play it.
Yeah, it was dope, man. You gotta look up.
It was a great game.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for a so people can hear what I'm talking about. It was so dope, but he does that shit. Like, he'll
that game kind of goes back to what you were talking about. Like, at the time when we played that, we hadn't really played a game quite like it.
Yeah.
And now that game kind of feels like
it was ahead of its time. It
feels so familiar now, because everybody has kind of taken what they did and built off of it.
Yeah, with all the stealth kills and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. And the fact that he's Polynesian as well. Like the character is another Pacific Islander, and they were embracing an area that we never really see, given props. Oh, um, that was loud as fuck too. God.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
Somebody put a whole different soundtrack on there.
He was wringing somebody's neck. I'm trying to find footage where he grabs somebody and it says the thingamabob. Is this it?
Hell, I really dug the designs in that movie too.
Yeah. Atlantis,
all the underwater creatures.
Yeah, it felt really alien,
and nothing felt nothing other than like the mosasaurs and to some extent the seahorses. Everything else felt very. It didn't feel like recycled shit you've seen in other movies.
The seahorses didn't feel recycled. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, like they had legs and stuff, but like they still resembled like seahorses. I don't know.
Oh,
like,
I get what you're saying. Oh, come on, do one of the damn kills, dude.
Yeah, I dug a lot of that stuff. I can't explain too much more because it's gonna spoil stuff. But
I know. Yeah, I kind of, man.
I was just happy that we didn't get like Cthulhu or the Kraken in there. We got something entirely different,
like the generic Kraken. We didn't get that.
Yeah. We got something entirely different, and that was nice.
Yeah, it was refreshing. The fuck? Aw, they're not doing the... Fuck it. You guys could look it up. Look up Mark of Kree and look up the takedowns, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Or multi-kills, I think they were called. Something like that. There was like these chants that he would do, and he'd be like, Mata! Rui! Or something like that. And he would, Ruhu! And he would like slam somebody. And if you did them in order, it would have, he would say each takedown would have a different phrase or step named to it, and it was dope. It was just fucking quality. But yeah, he does it, and towards the end of the movie, he does it a couple times, and before, like, at the very end of the movie, he does it when he spins around the trident and then raises it up into the air. It was a whole lot of that kind of stuff, or he'd, like, do a little form with a weapon that I'm assuming was traditional. I don't know if it was like a Maori stance or I don't know, because I don't know enough about the martial arts of that area. But I've seen this shit before. You know what I mean? Because I've seen a lot of demonstrations with shark fins, and I think it's funny that they call them shark fins, and the large staffs that they use they look like thick ass poles that like. I mean, they dwarf the ones that the Chinese martial arts use. These things look like columns. like if you get bludgeoned with this shit, you will die. Like there's no surviving this. But yeah, I've seen it, and Homeboy just, I don't know. It's like he can fight. I give him his props. He can fight. Whatever he trains in, if it's the traditional martial arts of the region that he's originally from, or if it's like, a mixture of things, dude can fight. And for a big guy, that's rare that he can fight that well. And his moves are clean. Especially
it makes it look good enough that you don't have to cut a dozen times.
Exactly. And it's fun to watch him going at it. Like when he fights Black Manta, man, that fight is dope. It's like one of the first one-on-one fights in these DC films where both combatants have skills. So the fight kind of goes back and forth like an old school Hong Kong film, as opposed to, I have super strength and you don't. So you get 2 hits and I get 1 and you're dead. You know what I mean? Like Wonder Woman kind of made it look good because she did lots of things on all kinds of people. You know what I mean? Like people with powers, people without powers, people with armor, trucks and tanks. She was comboing everything. Whereas here, he was trying to do moves, and the moves are being countered, and it was, I don't know, it was like they really understood the ins and outs of the characters, and it worked perfectly, But yeah, if you guys get the chance, we tried to be as vague as possible. It kind of sucks for doing a review. This is more of our thoughts, but we were trying to not spoil it since, the movie comes out on the 21st and we got to see it advanced. But Into the Spider-Verse is out. And I think, isn't Bumblebee already out? Oh, we're not talking about Bumblebee. I forgot because you didn't see it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
Spider-Verse is out, and we both watched Voltron, so we can talk about that. So let's talk about Spider-Verse. The Spider-Verse. What'd you think?
Easily better than the last 4 Spider-Man movies.
Yep, I agree. That's exactly what I felt.
Hands down.
Hands down. It was better.
I mean, I don't know. It just... I mean, I almost have like a little bit of a theory, like just because they couldn't stick to Miles's origin completely because of
Homecoming.
Because of Homecoming for one, and because you would have to establish the Ultimate Universe and blah blah blah.
And they did that in this.
A lot of that. But it's even different from that. Like I feel like it's its own reality aside from like you have the 1610 and then you have like this. You know what I mean?
What about the 616?
No, yeah, it's separate from that too. Like you have the 616, the 1610, and then this. Just because of what we were talking about with some of the things they showed at the very beginning of the movie with Peter Parker and how they made references to the Raimi films. Like the Raimi films could be their own separate universe as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I dug all that. Like, it in a way, there's at some point you could do something where they linked all that stuff together.
Yeah.
Or some of it. I thought that was actually pretty cool. I don't know, like Miles to me he was a very likable character, almost in some aspect, and that's maybe because we can relate to him more. I feel I liked him a bit more than I did Peter Parker in Homecoming.
Oh yeah. Because Peter Parker in Homecoming was just the white Miles Morales, and it was annoying because a lot of people don't understand that, like, as much as they say that Homecoming, a lot of people today think that Homecoming is the definitive version of Spider-Man, and I'm like, yeah, no, not even close. And all the things that they did right in that movie, most of it they bit off of Miles Morales' story.
Yeah.
The school.
Yeah, I mean, there was at some point, because I was looking at an article today from way back, I guess, before Homecoming came out, they had a character that they were going to cast that was going to be basically Genki, but it was a white person, and so somebody in the article was basically like, "You really, Hollywood, you're doing this again?"
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing this was like way before they found out who they actually cast as Ned. And it's also funny too that they named him Ned because in the comics, Genki runs across this chick who runs a Spider-Man blog because she's all about Spider-Man, so she's always reporting on him and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to figure out where, because Miles had just disappeared, so he was trying to use her as a means to kind of get the word out if anybody's seen him anywhere, seen Spider-Man anywhere, to kind of like get a hold of her and let her know so that people knew what was up or that knew where he was at because his friends were trying to find him.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she asked him who he is, because he won't tell her like who he is because he's trying to protect Miles's identity, he tells her that his name is Ned.
Which is a dig at Ned Leeds from back in the old days. Which he has ties to Kingpin and a really cool story called In the Name of the Rose. I don't know.
Does he become Hobgoblin at some point?
No, he becomes the Rose. Ned Leeds becomes the Rose. It's Jason Philip McIndale who's the was the Hobgoblin, and then part of him became like the Demo Goblin later on. This is all shit that most people reading comics today have no fucking clue what we're talking about.
Yeah,
but it's
that's way far back.
yeah, it's 90s stuff. And it's weird because
Yeah.
like we've been waiting a long time to have a grown-up Spider-Man because it feels like we kind of got that in the Raimi films, but he didn't really mature that much. I mean, in some ways he did, but he still had that kind of childish overtone to him, you know? Whereas in Into the Spider-Verse, not only do you get Miles, but you also get two versions of grown-up Spider-Man, which is awesome. Because this is what we haven't seen on screen yet. I mean, we've been reading Spider-Man since we were in, what, middle school?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's like, what, late 80s, all the way through the 90s, all the way to now. And they've never given us the adult Spider-Man except for like the 70s, or I think it was the 70s TV show. And that was so bad. It was fucking terrible. But, I mean, it was fun, but in comparison to these movies, it was terrible. But here, we got a mature Spider-Man who was all about his business. Then we got a version of that which is like...
midlife crisis.
Yeah, midlife crisis. Like he's past that point where he could do it all really well, and now things are falling apart. But it still felt like it was along the lines of Peter Parker's kind of life. You know, Peter Parker's that guy who, no matter what he does, there's some area that he has to fuck up with, you know? He has to struggle with.
It's like he was faced with a dilemma like he usually is in the comics, and he made the wrong choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it ruined his life.
And it fit, you know, it didn't feel bad. It didn't make you feel like, you know, this Peter Parker sucks, you know? I will say, right off the rip, and I actually heard someone else say this in a review, which made me happy to hear, and they weren't black. So it's not one of those things where only, you know, black folks will see this. But it's funny how when Miles gets a movie, they stick 5 other, right? 4 or 5 other, it was Spider-Ham.
Spider-Man, Spider-Ham, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Noir,
and Penny Parker.
And Penny Parker,
So 5 other Spider-Men have to, you know, 5 other non-black Spider-Men have to, you know, accompany him. You know, and it worked. I mean, I get it. It worked for this story, and he was part of a story where they did this, you know what I mean? Where I think in the comics, though, he was already his own thing. That wasn't his origin story. But it was cool in a way, but it's annoying that we didn't just get a film about Miles Morales. We had to get all these other characters.
The whole Spider-Verse thing should have been the sequel.
Yeah.
They should have spent... Because, like, they had to speed up his development because they had to cram all these other characters into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You also didn't get a whole lot of interaction with his mom. Like, there was a lot of interaction with his dad, which was cool, but, like, his mom is just as important in his life as his dad is, and that's one aspect that really separates him from Peter, because Peter didn't have his parents and Miles does.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how that changes up his whole dynamic, just because he has both his parents that are very involved in his life. And you kind of, his mom was just kind of like, oh, I love you a whole lot, and then that's kind of like all you gotta get out of her, and all the development and all the interaction is with his dad, between him and his dad. So that was kind of like a missed opportunity there, but you kind of had to cut out somebody somewhere, because otherwise your movie becomes too bloated. With characters. So, and you have to establish all these new Spider characters because you're trying to do spin-off sequels with Spider-Gwen especially, because you know, right off the grip, you knew, like I knew, and I'm sure you knew too, they were going to do a Spider-Gwen movie,
of course,
because of how popular that character is.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that's what makes it so frustrating, because you lose out on getting this person fully realized, because they're too busy trying to establish him and establish all these other people so they can establish sequels and make more money. Because at the end of the day, that's what they're trying to do, and
you know, more money.
Not just trying to tell a good story, but they're trying to get that dough.
Set up stuff, yeah. But I will say, even with that downside, it's a slight downside, but we all know why that is, and it's kind of frustrating that we're still dealing with that in this day and age, but Miles could easily carry his own film. His character, his whole supporting cast is equally as engaging and interesting as Peter Parker's cast back in the good old days, at the height of his popularity. You don't have to borrow anything from any other books. You don't have to add any other characters. Just him. It's perfect.
And you missed out on what could have been some potentially really good dialogue between him and Genki because they used him as Ned in the Homecoming movie. So that was like a huge loss for this film, especially. And I think they did the high school thing better than they did. As brief as it was in this film, because I mean there was a lot more scenes with high school Peter Parker, but I feel like this was better in the sense that his powers are at play in this. So you can have the whole high school, all the little things that come with high school, being a kid in high school and dealing with being awkward and dealing with the opposite sex and dealing with trying to fit in. But now you have powers thrown into that equation, and it just sets up, all kinds of different situations and opportunities, the way things play out. And I think that it kept it fresh and made it more interesting than just, here's Peter Parker in high school.
And on top of that, how many times have we seen Peter Parker in school already?
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like, it was cool to see. Number one, we got like a modern New York. You know what I mean? A more modern New York. Number two, we got like when I say modern, you hear people speaking in Spanish in the background when shit happens. You're seeing all kinds of different types of folks. You're seeing a kid who has, both working class. He has both his parents. They're working class people. You're seeing the school be diverse without beating you over the head. It just felt more real. Whereas, like, whenever they de-age Peter Parker, make him a kid in the films, when they focus on that shit, like Homecoming. I didn't really dig Homecoming like everybody else did. I thought parts of it were cooler, but overall it was bland. There was like little.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't show you or do anything different that you hadn't already seen in previous Spider-Man movies.
Well, and it didn't really, like, it didn't tell me why am I supposed to be rooting for this kid again. It's like, ooh, I like Iron Man. It's like, okay, but what about Uncle Ben? You know what I mean? Like, what about, like, I get that they didn't want to retread that, but turning the focus from living up to what Uncle Ben wanted you to do and kind of moving all the way to impressing Iron Man, it kind of killed Spider-Man's importance, And even in the comics, Spider-Man's hero was Captain America. So to shift it, because Iron Man is the more popular dude right now, according to, Marvel, it just fits their narrative that the first guy is the more popular guy. It kind of makes him seem less, like there's less importance to what he's trying to do, because who gives a shit if you impress Iron Man? Like, that's not
or even that they had Iron Man play such a huge role in Spider-Man's development in general. Spider-Man developed his gadgets, he developed his web shooters, he developed his own tech, and you got that more so in the Amazing movies, which everybody hates. But they took that all away in the Homecoming movie, and it just became, it all stemmed from Tony, and you don't see why Peter Parker is so bright and why he's so smart, because all that is shoved on as Tony's responsibility.
Exactly.
That takes away from the character as well.
I agree. So yeah, I think this succeeds where Homecoming fails for a lot of reasons. Another cool thing was they don't beat you over the head with the details that Miles exists in an alternate reality, but the way that they do it with, like, the intro to their Spider-Man, and they show him doing things we've seen in the movies, but they're slightly different. Or like Coca Soda in the background. Or like what Zeke pointed out with the Chance the Rapper poster, and he had like a 3 instead of a 4 on his hat.
Yeah.
Just little things to give away that this is not, PDNY instead of NYPD. Like, if you're paying attention, you get it, but you don't need to. It wouldn't really change that much for people who don't know the history of the character. I like too that they didn't make any reference to the Ultimates, because that would have just made it way more complicated,
Yeah.
But overall, the setup for the film was dope. The way it was written was dope. I'm spoiling the shit out of this one. I don't care. Because it's too hard for us to really talk about what's going on. Unless
I recorded a review, and it's kind of I didn't want to spoil anything, and some stuff I realized afterward that I could have spoiled because I didn't watch the trailers. I only watched the initial teaser, and that was it.
Really?
And because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna see this. Like, you already got me, so I didn't watch the other trailers afterwards, so I didn't know they had already showed like villains and stuff in there other than the Prowler.
Yeah.
So like I left all that stuff. I briefly talked about how I liked the differences that they took with those villains, but I didn't explain anything further because I didn't know that they had actually revealed that. Man, trailers reveal too much, man. Because like sitting there and seeing that, like I was like totally surprised, and it increased I feel like it increased my enjoyment more so than it would have if I had saw it in a trailer, because I knew more I would have known more what to expect. But I went in not knowing as much.
Really?
So
I still
didn't
think
watch any of that stuff.
movies are still an experience, and even when I know that something is in the film, the moment that it happens usually makes the experience different for me. I mean, I don't know. I hear a lot of people say that, they don't like shit being spoiled for them. And I'm like, but it's a movie. Like, the way social media works, people have GIFs of sequences in the film, and you can't escape it if you actually use social media.
But I mean, some stuff is supposed to be a surprise. Like when they revealed who Doc Ock was.
Yeah, I didn't see that in any trailers.
If you hadn't seen that in the trailer,
I didn't.
But they showed it in the trailer.
Which one?
In I think the third one. I think the third one they showed her, and I was like, that. Like, you should save those moments for the film, so that when it does happen, you're like, holy crap! Oh my god! You totally didn't see. I can't see anybody who would have seen that coming because you didn't know her full name.
Well, here's a question.
You just thought she was. I thought she was just some, one of those like kind of like crazy scientists that is so into their work that that's all they think about morning, noon, and night, because her hair is kind of disheveled. And she's really sporadic, and she's moving all over the place and talking real fast because her mind's working at a mile a minute. And then when she ties her hair up and puts on the glasses, and then you see the arms come on, and I was just like, oh my god,
yeah.
Like that threw me for a loop. So,
well, here's my question though: was there an Otto Octavius in Miles's world since there was a Spider-Man?
Yeah.
So that's
and he was a dude,
and that's her father.
I mean, no, there was no female Doc Ock, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, you mean in the comics? I'm saying in the comics there was just regular Doc Ock.
Yeah, just regular Doc Ock. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I mean, the Scorpion's totally different. I don't even think they had established Tombstone in the Ultimate Universe, so all those things were nice little surprises.
And Tombstone,
to me anyway,
he sounded like he was voiced by the dude who plays Tobias Whale on
what's his name, Crondon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. I didn't look to see who voiced him.
Yeah, me neither. If it wasn't him, that's who they were imitating, because man, they sounded like him. Yeah, I dug all that. The Green Goblin was completely different. It still was along the lines of what we were used to from the Ultimate Universe, because in the Ultimate Universe he was a big monster,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Prowler was friggin' threatening as hell.
Mm-hmm.
You see some stuff in the trailer, but I'm just like, oh well, he's just formidable. But in this, when you see the when you see the whole thing, you're like, oh my god, like could take down one of these spider people.
Yeah, yeah. A couple times it felt like he was going to kill him.
Yeah, yeah, it was really good. I mean, I never in my life thought the Prowler would be a threat. Because, I remember those old books when he showed up at first and he was kind of a villain, and then he turned he turned himself around, and he was a Spider-Man ally, but it never seemed like he was
worth a damn.
Like it seemed like if he were to get into it like with other street level people, he might be able to handle his own. But if he tried to handle other super powered people or people with super suits that were better quality than his, he would be at like total disadvantage.
Someone like Moon Knight would just beat the brakes off of him. Whereas like this version, it felt like he was really a threat. I mean, the score, the music that would play when he was doing his thing, the way he was so relentless, it worked. It worked so well.
Yeah, man. I was like, damn, you just got to give Batman a run for his money.
Yeah, exactly. Should we break down what the story is? Yeah, I said we're going to spoil it.
Let people. I mean, people are going to go see it anyways. So.
Yeah. Well, so well, I'll let you do it. You're the Marvel dude, so.
I mean, I wasn't even going to do it. I was going to jump over to Voltron, but.
What? I'm not done. We got so much more to talk about. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I mean, okay. I mean, it starts off with Miles.
Just like summarize. We'll summarize it.
All right. Basically, the Peter Parker in his world is trying to stop Kingpin from messing with realities because it's going to destroy all realities, and in the process, he ends up getting killed. And Miles just happens to be there when it happens. He asked Miles to promise him that he would stop Kingpin, and he does. And then eventually he ends up getting spider powers.
Well, no, first remember it was you don't know that the Collider is dealing with realities in the beginning, and the Spider-Man has a what do you call it? A goober.
A flash drive.
A flash drive with a virus on it that would fuck up the whole system. And during his attempt to stop it, he's attacked by the Green Goblin and the Prowler, and there's an explosion, and he gets pinned under rubble and shit and injured in this big ass. I think the Collider actually goes off. It goes off in the very beginning. That's what opens the rift to let the other spider people come through. And after the explosion, he gives the flash drive to Miles and tells Miles, you got to get this. Who did he say to give it to?
No, he said you
got to come back and use it.
Yeah.
Tells him to come back and use it and destroy this machine. You have to promise me you'll do it. And the dude's like, okay, I'll do it. Miles like, I'll do it. And he's like, what about you? And he's like, I'm cool. Just you go do your thing. And when Miles leaves, Kingpin shows up with the Prowler, and Kingpin just murks Spider-Man. Like, that's it. I didn't even expect it to happen so fast either. I thought we were at least going to get a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like a little bit more Spider-Man of that Spider-Man in the film, but nope.
I mean, I kind of saw it coming with the way he was talking to Miles. Like, he wasn't in good shape. Uh-huh. He was coughing a lot, and it just felt like one of those, you know how when somebody gets shot really bad in like a war movie, and the guys tell him like, "Oh no, you're gonna be all right, man. You can be just okay," and the guy's like, "I'm cold," like he's gonna die.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so the Collider goes off, big explosion. Spider-Man's pinned. He gives Miles the thing, the goober. Kingpin kills Spider-Man, and then I'll let you do the rest.
All right. Then Miles is going to he's going to his new school. He doesn't really want to go because he wants to be with his friends, and there's a whole back and forth between him and his dad about how he's smart enough to be there, and he should take this as an opportunity to better himself. So you have your whole awkward new kid in school moments in the film. He runs across Gwen, who he doesn't know is Gwen yet. It's just a girl in class that he's kind of attracted to.
Yeah, but
You know,
that's not Spider Gwen.
yeah, it is.
No, she's from another dimension. Remember, because in her dimension,
Well, no.
Spider-Man.
She's there undercover. Because remember, she explains in the movie that something told her to go to that school, and she didn't realize what it was until she saw Miles.
Oh, okay, my bad. I always
Oh no,
thought
you're all right.
I always thought that she came through when the collider went off,
No, she did,
and
but she came earlier because remember they had been doing tests and
oh, okay, I
whatnot
got you.
before that. Before the part where we see with Spider-Man fighting Green Goblin
Gotcha.
and Prowler.
Okay,
Because she had been there and been undercover for a while trying to figure out how to get back.
I got it. I didn't realize
Oh yeah, it's all it's whatever.
because I always thought that she was another one that came through. I guess that does make sense because so in this universe, then they never tackle that.
Well, yeah, I mean it was pulling other people, but they don't explain.
No, they don't explain
when the other three got here.
No, they don't.
There.
They don't explain about this world's Gwen Stacy. Like, there's no allusions made to what happened to the original Gwen Stacy of that world. Like, did she die the way that?
Yeah, it's possible. It's not the ultimate version, so it's not the ultimate universe, so she's not still alive.
Yeah, but anyway, sorry. Keep going.
So he then ends up going to see his Uncle Aaron, who his dad and his parents don't like him going over there because they know he likes to do bad things. He likes to do hood rat stuff with his friends.
No, it's fun to do bad things.
Yeah, but Miles sees him as his cool uncle who kind of gives him sage advice, how to talk to girls and whatnot. And so he knows Miles likes to tag stuff, so he takes him to this area, and he's doing this thing, throwing up his spray paint and throwing up his tags and whatnot, and because he wants to encourage him to pursue that aspect, that his art, and that's when he ends up getting bit by a spider that's from Alchemax, in which has ties to
Spider-Man 2099. Yeah.
So he ends up going to sleep that night, and his powers as he's asleep, his powers kind of manifest themselves, and he's going to school the next day, and so you have all these slapsticky moments with his powers. He ends up getting his hands caught in because he can't control them yet, and so he can't control his power to stick to walls and surfaces and whatnot. So there's a whole lot of stuff that happens with that. I'm not even going to go into all that because you should just go watch it and go see it. Then after that, God, I'm trying to remember what happens right after that.
Well,
after that, there's the funeral and the ceremony for Peter Parker, and so he goes to get a costume, and he asks the guy at the counter if it's going to fit, and this is like the Stan Lee cameo, which is actually really awesome.
Yeah.
Because he tells him, "Oh, the costume always fits." Meaning, and it's something that they touch on at the very end of the movie, but just in that little bit, he's kind of telling Stan is kind of telling you anybody can be Spider-Man. But then the camera kind of pans over, and it says that there's no refunds for your purchases, and he's smiling. There's a little twinkle in the smile and shit. It's a really cool cameo scene, especially after we've lost Stan.
Yeah.
So then he goes to the ceremony, and they're saying all these words about Peter Parker and how much of an inspiration he was, and I think that's when he kind of decides he wants to fulfill his promise, but he doesn't really know how, and so he goes to eventually goes to the grave at night, kind of telling Peter that he doesn't know what to do because he messed up trying to work at being Spider-Man. He ends up trying to practice to become Spider-Man. He ends up breaking the goober or the flash drive.
Yeah.
So now he doesn't know what to do, and then that's when he ends up when he's at the grave, kind of asking Peter what he should do. That's when the actual Spider-Man shows up, or the Spider-Man from an alternate universe shows up.
The older
midlife
one.
crisis Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And so he accidentally shocks him with his Venom Sting, which is another power he didn't know he had, and he knocks out Parker. And then the police show up. There's this big chase scene where they're web slinging around, trying to get away, and eventually Parker explains to Miles how he ended up here and what's going on, and what the Collider is actually doing. And
it's weird because he at first doesn't really want to. He doesn't really want to help. He doesn't want to work with Miles.
Yeah, he doesn't want to work with Miles. He doesn't want to train him or anything.
He's like, I'm just tell me where the thing is, and I'm gonna go destroy it and get back home.
Yeah,
and it's cool too because like throughout the film, every time something happens, well, not something, but as he reaches I don't want to say a milestone, but as he figures out a bigger thing about his powers, they cut to like pages from comics Spider-Man comics that Peter Parker was going through his version of the same thing. And then some of them are just covers, to show you where Miles is in his development. And,
I mean, they even break the fourth wall because at some points, as in the form of jokes, because they're all talking about. There's a part of the movie where they all talk about their different origins.
Yeah,
and there's jokes that ensue with that as well. So I mean, it's cool because they take the whole origin story formula that we've seen in films or in superhero films, and they kind of add a little bit something extra to keep it interesting. Unlike say Venom, which kind of was just straight up paint by the numbers origin story.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie had that definitely going for it.
Yeah, it was. It's weird watching all this stuff unfold and you still feel invested with all these different characters because there were a lot of characters, and they gave each Spider person had like a 5-minute. I mean, no, in total, all of them gave us their origin stories in like a couple seconds, maybe a minute or two, and each one was still pretty good. You got it. You were like, holy shit, I'm interested, I'm invested, and as the story went along, you kind of, like, you vibe with each of these characters. You don't feel like anyone stands out more than the others, even though they do kind of firmly put the focus on Miles. You still feel like the other characters were equally as important. They shouldn't have been, but they were equally as important. What was I going to say? The scene at the cemetery was pretty dope. The look of it. What do you think about the look of the film in general? Like this quirky, it almost felt like stop motion at times, the way that the animation was done.
I mean, I liked it, and I get why they went with the reduced frame rate.
Why?
Just because it kind of like how you draw like a flip book. Like I used to do that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And you start flipping through it, and it kind of has that feel because they're trying to emulate a comic book in motion, but they're doing it better than say like Ang Lee did with the Hulk.
Yeah, true.
He was trying, but it was like almost too much of something that should have been used sparingly. And in this case, because it's animation, and because it's CG, they were able to blend styles together in order for it to not look out of it didn't look out of place. Like even though what's her name, the anime Spider Girl, she was 3D, but she looked 2D.
Yeah.
And she looked like something out of an anime, but it didn't look so out of place that it didn't look like it didn't belong. Same thing with Spider-Ham.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Like Spider-Ham to me, like he proves that you should do a slapstick movie or something,
Yeah.
a slapstick something.
Yeah,
Because he was pulling out mallets and anvils and whatnot, and
yeah,
it worked. It didn't seem stupid. Like the movie embraces, like how we were talking about earlier, how it embracing the comic book aspect of all this stuff,
hmm
you know, and the craziness that goes on in it. It does all that, and it doesn't ever seem like doesn't ever seem like it shouldn't be plausible in the world that they're establishing.
yeah.
It all works.
Well, because if you read Spider-Man comics, one thing about Spider-Man's universe is that he's the everyman superhero who goes through ridiculously crazy situations. Sometimes they're really serious, sometimes they're really cartoony and goofy, and sometimes they're just like, how the fuck is he in this situation, you know?
Yeah.
Like the nod to Cosmic Spider-Man when he's flying through, when he tells his version of the story and you see him flying through that, like he's in a comet and he's like flying through the city and he hits the ground and one of his boots pops off. It's like there's so many of these
Like Easter eggs.
Easter eggs, like Dusk Till Dawn. Did you see that in the background?
No, I didn't. I saw the Seth Rogen movie or poster.
Yeah, there's like a Shaun of the Dead poster in the background, and it says "From Dusk Till Dawn." And then there's a what's the other one? Hi, hello. I don't know if that was what's the movie called? Fuck. Planet Inglewood, and then there's you're talking about Bridesmaids. It was called Baby Showers in this movie. God, but what was the other one? Anyway, it's cool to see all these goofy things, and I'm digging. I want a good figure of, you know, midlife crisis Spider-Man with the belly and everything. Because even though, like, just because you have this belly, it doesn't mean you're automatically in a midlife crisis. But, you know, you get to a certain age, it's like we all get this belly. And that's dope. Like, he's still kind of in shape, but he's got that little gut. Like a regular dude. Like, that's awesome. But, yeah, man, I like the style, the visual, you know, the art direction of the movie. I just don't like the frame rate jumping up and dropping and jumping up and dropping, because they do that a lot. The frame rate, they use a reduced frame rate during, like, action sequences, you know, where it starts looking like stop motion. And during, like, everything else, it's smooth and it's you know, there's nice, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not, it's fluid is what I'm trying to say. But during the action scenes,
like the fact that they took down the frame rate somewhat makes a lot of the motion. For some reason, it helped me see some of the motion better when they weren't moving too fast.
Yeah. For the action scenes,
like I remember the part when he's at the beginning before he's supposed to be getting ready for school and he's singing that song.
Yeah.
And you know he's vibing to the beat, and you're seeing him you've seen them make all these little subtle movements that you would miss if it was in like a Pixar movie, because they're running everything at like 60 plus frames a second or whatever. So everything's all super smooth, so you don't get to see some of the little subtleties in the animation that you got to see because the frame rate kind of stopped to show you some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Your eyes kind of lingered on it a bit more, so your brain was able to process some of that.
I think better. In some sequences, in those kinds of sequences, because in the action sequences, like the first big action sequence with Miles is the chase when the midlife crisis Spider-Man. I don't know. We need to stop calling him that, but you know, Peter B. Parker, which is funny because that's his name. It's Peter Benjamin Parker. It's always been Peter Benjamin Parker. So it's kind of funny that he doesn't have the middle. They don't use. You never see the middle initial in anything else. But when he's sliding around through the city on him, you know what I mean? And like they're saying like some kid's running around with a dead hobo. Like the animation is more fluid, but then every other action sequence after that, it's like they drop the frame rate heavily. And, and it's hard.
I love the action sequence at the end of the movie.
Yeah, like the setup,
strange levels of just visual goodness.
Yeah. the setup, excuse me, the setup is awesome, but the it's hard to read at times.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like I was saying earlier. I don't know if I recorded that part or not, but we were talking about the Final Fantasy, like the new stuff from Advent Children on. Whenever they do an action sequence, everything is so fast, and it's like, 24 frames. Like they go from 60 frames per second to 24 frames, and then the weird camera movement, the weird virtual, what is it, the L cam, I guess they call it.
Yeah.
With it floating all over the place, so you don't know where up is, you don't know where down is, you don't know, is dude on screen right, is he on screen left, where the fuck are they? They're just floating in the air doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's kind of like, like I have to rewind the scene 20 times just to get, a feel for the action. Because that final fight scene, there's so much going on, and I swear I missed so many things, you know what I mean? Like, had I not seen it the way that I saw it, I would have missed all of the stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I was able to go back and see things, and I was like,
Yeah.
If I couldn't do that, I would have missed the whole damn movie. Like, all the action would have just flown over my head, because it was kind of choppy looking with this weird frame rate. It felt like they should have upped the frame rate during the action scenes, and they could have slowed it down during everything else. Because, mundane stuff like conversation and singing a song and, dancing and stuff, that stuff looks cool with low frame rates, because it doesn't have to be it's not that much information. It doesn't need to be like, beat you over the head. This is the first time.
It worked in the forest.
Yeah.
Trying to get away from Doc Ock. It's just, the end of the movie just had so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it was hard to read.
But so essentially after the scene in the cemetery, you get the explanation for what is driving Miles to want to take up the whole Spider-Man thing. Why he's running around in this hoopty, kid Spider-Man costume trying to do stuff, trying to learn how to use his powers, and he's trying to convince Peter B. Parker to train him, and he's kind of like, yeah, nah, I'll figure it out, and then, I'll go home. But then Miles kind of guilt trips him into training him, or at least working with him, and it works. So
it kind of reminds him of how, kind of rekindles his drive to keep going on as Spider-Man, because they show you, like, in his world and how he ended up in the position he ended up in, he was kind of, he was in a funk, man.
Yeah. He kind of lost, because, in the comics, much like Iris Allen is, Barry Allen's driving force a lot of the time. I mean, it's his mom and it's his wife, but the more so Iris in his adulthood. She's a driving force for why he does what he does and why he can always get up and continue. For Spider-Man, that's always been Mary Jane. You know what I mean? Like, it was Uncle Ben at first, but then when he finally got the girl he was looking for, all this time, the girl of his dreams, it became her. She became the driving force in his life to keep him going, And it's kind of strange that they actually went there, where they show you that, without Mary Jane in the picture, Spider-Man's going to lose his way. Like, that's just the kind of the truth of the situation. So it's kind of cool that they went there. But they go to Alchemax to, I think they were going to try to build another thing, or
they were going to re-download what was in the components or the data that they needed to remake the Goober.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, they get caught by Doc Ock and Kingpin, and so they have to make their escape, because they can't download it because there's so much. Doc Ock doesn't. She doesn't organize her desktop or a file, so it's all just one big cluttered mess. So they decide to just steal the whole computer, and in doing so, they get caught. They're trying to get away. They almost lose, but then Spider-Gwen shows up and kind of saves both of them,
Yeah.
and then they all make their escape. And she then goes into explaining how she ended up in Miles' reality, and how I think, isn't that when the other ones show up too?
Yeah. Yeah, Spider Noir and Peter Porker and all the rest of them. Yeah, the other
Penny.
three, they show up. Penny and all of them, they show up and they explain, how they got there.
They
and what
all
they're trying to
explain
do.
their origins too.
Yeah, and it's like it's so quick. That's the part that surprised me. It was so quick, and you still got it. You got all the information. It's like they could retread the Uncle Ben situation without beating you over the head, and it would still be interesting. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wouldn't be whack if they do it.
Yeah, they even talk about people they've lost.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
like everybody's lost somebody, which is like a running thing with spider people, I guess.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always Uncle Ben. Like, Spider-Gwen lost Peter in her reality because he turned into the lizard and he ended up dying. Penny lost her dad. Spider Noir lost his Uncle Benjamin.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I forgot who Peter Porker lost. Was it his cat or something like that?
I think so. I think so. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
They play with that. They play with that, and they kind of make a joke out of the whole origin story thing, and in comics in general, because in comics, a lot of people, their whole reason for being who they are is because they lost somebody close to them.
Yeah.
How many people have lost their parents or a parent, or some or significant other, that drove them to want to become a superhero. So, they're, if you're a comic book head, you'll see these things, and it'll be funny on another level, as opposed to somebody who's, as a casual Fairweather fan, who's just going to see a good movie, and they're like, oh yeah, that happened to Batman, and that happened to Peter Parker as well. So I find it funny that they're saying all these people lost. They'll get the joke.
Yeah.
But the full context of it is going to be kind of lost on them.
On other people, I think.
That's what I'm saying, on the Fairweather fans.
Yeah. But yeah, they essentially they meet each other, they team up. You also get the exposition about what Kingpin's plan is and what the fallout from his testing actually has been, which is cool because you're seeing Kingpin doing things on such a scale that we never ever see from him. Like, typically Kingpin is just mafia shit. You know what I mean? Like, Kingpin's not about fucking up reality. You know what I mean? Like, that's never been his shtick. So to see him do it, and especially based on the versions of Kingpin that we've gotten in recent years, like in the Daredevil show and whatnot, there's only one thing that could really make him want to fuck up reality. And it's like, it translated perfectly from, the small screen to the big screen. His driving force is also his woman, so you already get the idea what he's going for and why he's going for it. So that was cool. And then I guess we can generalize the end, all the stuff leading up to the end. Essentially, it's just a series of situations in which Miles is alongside the other Spider folks, and they're all kind of figuring out each other and understanding what they're trying to do, where they're going to go from here now that they're all together, and they know what the plan is. They know what they're working towards and how they're going to stop Kingpin. But they realize that they have to help Miles get to the point where he can he can defend himself, essentially. He can do the Spider-Man shtick on his own. And one of the cool things that happens is later on in the film, when they're all kind of they've gathered their resolve and they're all ready to go do the thing. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be the one to help shut down the thing, and you guys can get home. Don't worry about it. And he's like, nah, you're not ready. And then Miles is kind of like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to do this thing. You don't have to do this, blah, blah, blah. Peter Parker's doing his typical Spider-Man thing where he always is the one to sacrifice himself, because with great power comes great responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny how they dance around saying that.
Well, no, Peter was like, don't even say it.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm saying. They dance around it. They don't actually like repeat the line over and over. Peter has this talk with Miles. He webs him up to his chair, and he essentially is just like, look, there's a certain there's a certain thing that happens to you that makes you, actually he said there isn't a specific thing that happens. You just know when you're ready, and you haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith.
Yeah. And he's like, essentially, show me that if you're really ready, then, show me right now. Prove to me that you can do what you need to do. Turn invisible on command. Use your spider sting on command. And Miles can't do any of that shit. So he's like, when you're ready, you'll be ready. You know what I mean? You'll know. And it was quality. It was like, damn, they actually, I don't know, they broke it down. Like, yeah, you got the skills, you got the abilities, but you haven't got to the point yet where you can actually pull off the things that you're going to need to, because this job is not easy, And since everybody was talking about losing somebody, I guess Miles hadn't been to that point yet. Because after this, they literally dropped that shit on him. Like the whole story just starts beating the shit out of Miles, and layers and layers and layers and layers of shit happens to push him into the direction. Because, a level of tragedy has to happen to make you a quality Spider-Man character, And all the other Spider-Men talked about who they lost, and then, Miles was about to get his lesson. And essentially from that point, they go to do their thing. Miles has to have this realization of what's going on. Also, there's the whole situation with, I think after that, that's when he fights the Prowler. And he finds out who the Prowler actually is. And that shit just, that scene was probably the most powerful scene in the movie for me.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, holy shit, like, Miles' situation is fucked up, you know what I mean? Because, here's, and this is me spoiling shit, and I don't care. He's been going to his Uncle Aaron to talk to him and get advice, and then you find out his Uncle Aaron is the fucking Prowler. And not only is he the Prowler, but he was literally going out of his way to try to kill him. And even after he sees Miles' face, he kind of stops for a second, and then Miles pulled his mask up to show that it's him. And the Prowler kind of thought about it for a second, and then was like, fuck, I gotta do what I told him I would do. So he pulls the mask down, and he's about to execute his damn nephew. I'm like, this dude is grimy. Like, this is crazy. I mean, you get it. It's like Kingpin is not a guy that you don't make good on what you're going to make good on with him. But Kingpin just kills him, flat out. And that's...
because he's about to, but then he just stops.
Yeah.
He kind of just holds his arms out because he can't bring himself to kill him.
Yeah. And then Kingpin just pops him in in his back or something like that. And that's all she wrote for the Prowler. And it was kind of dope because it's like, this was the thing. I mean, it's a sad, sad situation, but it's dope in the sense that not only was the Prowler, to this point, the Prowler was the one, villain that was literally, seconds away every time you saw him from killing Miles.
Yeah.
And then here he is, he gets killed, and it's not a happy thing because of who he actually is to Miles. And then Miles is looking to him. He was actually looking for him throughout the film after he gets his powers, but he keeps getting his uncle's voicemail. And, uncle's like, I'm away. I'm going to be away for a few days, and, just, leave your message. So at a time when he needed someone to talk to explain his situation and probably get some advice, and it's the one person he trusted probably the most of everybody we meet, he doesn't get that opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, he literally doesn't get that opportunity. So, and then it turns out to be, almost his undoing, which sucks.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean that was totally his Uncle Aaron became his Uncle Ben moment in that point in the film.
Mm-hmm. But and it just powerful ass writing, man. Powerful ass writing, and it's funny because like here's a character who had like what 2 scenes with him, if that, 1.5 scenes before he disappears from the film, and then it's revealed that he's actually a villain. It's like holy shit, and the fact that they made the Prowler so just he was scary.
Yeah,
like every time you saw him, you kind of felt for Miles, like holy shit, dude. You're gonna
I know the part in the apartment when you think he's gonna catch him, and he just happens to go invisible.
Yeah,
and he doesn't see him.
Yeah, shit was scary. You're like, holy crap, dude, you're gonna get it. But he managed to, kind of outlive his uncle. But yeah, that whole part was dope, and then everything kind of leads up to a point where Miles kind of has to, after the talk with Peter kind of forces him to sit back and think about what's going on. And while he's thinking about this and Peter leaves and he's tied up to his chair with his mouth webbed shut, Miles' dad, who doesn't like Spider-Man, I think it's a front though, because throughout the film you see him do things that his reaction is kind of like, oh shit, like when they, in the beginning of the movie, when their world Spider-Man gets killed, him and his wife are watching the news and they have this reaction like, holy shit, Spider-Man's dead. But his dislike for Spider-Man kind of bumps up when he sees a kid in a Spider-Man suit over the Prowler, and then he sees that the Prowler is actually Aaron, which is his brother, and then he's dead. So he thinks Spider-Man killed his brother. So it adds that kind of extra piece to the, the shit show that is, a Spider-Man's life. Yeah. Where everybody, you know what I mean? Everything is not going the way it should go. And, now Miles has a piece of that. Yeah, he's listening to his dad talk. He wants to say something, but then he kind of chooses not to really give his dad any. He can't.
Well, he can't talk.
He can't talk. But he doesn't even try to let him know that something's up, because he would give away the fact that this craziness is going on, which is another layer of that whole shit. Like I said, the shit show that's Spider-Man's life. Everything is going wrong, and you need those people in your life, your support system, to kind of, amp things up for you or help you deal with the problem, and you can't tell them. You know what I mean? Because if you tell them, it'll make things worse. So he just sits there and listens, and you kind of see from his expressions how this is affecting him. And I think it's dope the way they pull that off, too. It feels legit, like, damn, what would you do in this situation? All you could do is think about what you got to deal with, and then either dig down deep and see if you can actually deal with it, or give up.
Yeah.
And so the way it's set up, of course, if he gave up, there wouldn't be a movie. So he kind of digs down deep, breaks out of the webs using his sting, and then he goes to that world's Spider-Man's little hideout, because their world's Spider-Man was kind of like it's like he's the best version of Spider-Man. Like he built stuff. He had a little lair underneath the house.
The spider cave.
Yeah. And it had all these little things. Like it had the spider buggy, which a lot of people might not remember, but I do. It was because the original Spider-Man didn't have his license as an adult. He never got his license. And Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four gave him a buggy, saying, like, you need to be able to get around town, but you need something that's recognizable. So here's this buggy, and Spider-Man wouldn't tell him that he didn't get his license. He kind of bullshitted around it. And then you see him driving it for the first time, and he's fucking up, and he's, fishtailing and shit, and he ends up driving it into the Hudson, and he's just like, fuck that, I'm never gonna drive again. But in this, that, grown-up Peter Parker actually had his license, so the buggy's parked right there in his little spider cave, and there were all the different variations of the costume. It was just like a Bat Cave essentially, but just with Spider-Man shit. But anyway, Miles goes to and Aunt May knows this. Aunt May in this universe knew that her, nephew was Spider-Man, and she had no problem. I think she was in on the operation too, because when they go to Aunt May in the beginning of the film, or earlier in the film, I should say, she just is like, "Here, let me show you what's going on. Come with me," and she just takes them to the lair. That was cool too for her to see alternate dimension Peter after she lost her Peter.
Yeah,
it's kind of a weird moment, but it was pretty cool to see.
And because of all the craziness that her Peter had went through, she knew right away, like, oh, you're a Peter from an alternate dimension.
Yeah, it didn't surprise her as much as you would have expected it to, But what was I gonna say? He goes in and takes one of the costumes, spray paints parts of it, and
May gives him the Peter's web shooters, kind of like a passing of the torch moment.
Exactly, and he goes back to help the other spider folks stop the Kingpin, and the action is nuts. It's a lot though. It's a lot to take in, but it's all good. None of it sucks. I want to talk about Spider Noir for just a second because I like Nick Cage, and a lot of people don't like Nick Cage and they diss the shit out of him, and I still think he's a good actor. He's got skills. He's been in a lot of my favorite movies. One of my favorite action films of all time is Face Off, and people don't give the movie enough credit. They just say it's ridiculous, but I'm like, imagine if the Joker impersonated Bruce Wayne while Bruce Wayne had to impersonate the Joker. It would literally be the greatest freaking Batman story ever, because of the amount, and they couldn't immediately switch. Bruce couldn't, as the Joker, he couldn't let anybody know, and he got stuck that way for a while. And then meanwhile, Joker is pretending to be Bruce, and he's living out Bruce's life, humping Bruce's girl, the whole nine. You know what I mean? And like Bruce can't do anything about it. Like, it would be the most taxing shit ever. And that was Face Off. And a lot of people are like, this movie's absurd, it's stupid. We know, but it's literally you living as the bad guy while the bad guy gets to live as the good guy. Like, it's literally that situation. But Nick Cage's Spider-Man Noir was pretty dope. He felt like legit like one of the like a 1940s or 30s gumshoe.
Yeah.
In a Spider-Man costume, and when they showed the flashback with him socking dudes, like those haymakers that they always threw, like in Dick Tracy and stuff, it was dope. And he just felt, even though you don't really spend that much time with him, for some reason of the bunch, to me, he felt the most interesting of the bunch. And
I mean, they definitely wrote. It's like they wrote with Nick Cage in mind.
Yeah.
And his dialogue, like there's little bits like there's a part where they're stealthing a bunch of bad guys, and he's got one in a headlock, and you hear him quietly say, "Sleep."
Yeah.
And like I'm laughing, and like no one else is laughing. I'm like, how did you guys not find this funny?
Yeah, I don't think they caught it. Yeah, because it shit was funny, man. It was noticeable too. I don't know. I dug it. I thought it was funny. Penny Parker, I'm kind of at a stage in my life where anime doesn't affect me like it used to. Back in the day, I'd be like, that's dope, it's anime, blah. I'm like, I'm animated out. I mean, 30 years of this shit, and it's still in the same spot. Actually, it's like the look of anime has evolved, but the content is still in the same spot. You know what I mean? Like, they're recycling everything. It's just which director is going to do it now. You know what I mean? Which studio is going to do it now?
Yeah, I feel like they didn't do enough, and that's probably due to time. Where I think they could have incorporated some of those, not the really like nasty stuff of anime, but some of the anime tropes that you have seen that have been played the fuck out.
I don't think that for her, like, I'm saying, I'm prefacing that like I just didn't care that Penny Parker was in there.
Well, I mean, they didn't do anything to me that was interesting other than the visual look, her attitude because she was pretty upbeat
Yeah,
when she needed to be. You know, you see her like eating candy in her mech while she's doing stuff, and
yeah.
you know, and
She was more like a video game character and
yeah,
less like
yeah,
an anime.
and I think they could have. They probably just didn't take enough time to pull from the genre and incorporate it in some way into the character. If anything, just for some comic relief.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, they had little things, but I think overall, she wasn't as. She just didn't stand out as much as I would have expected in 2018 for an anime character. Because
Yeah,
it's to the point where the rest of the world has caught up with Japan when it comes to anime, so it's not so culturally specific as it once was. You know what I mean? Like anime
yeah,
kind of now belongs to everybody. Because I mean, like the stuff that's made in the U.S. that has an anime style is animated in Korea, and if it's not animated in Korea, it's animated right here. So it's like, and then sometimes China, but even China does their own version of anime now. You know what I mean? They've been doing it for a
yeah.
number of years now, but it's like everyone has their own thing. But yeah, she didn't stand out that much to me. Spider-Man Noir did because he just felt even his stance, his little boxing stance, it was so
No,
old school.
yeah. Even Spider Ham because he's a cartoon.
Yeah,
You know, you have they could pull so much from that. You know, his some of his lines about not freaking people out because he's a talking animal.
yeah.
The stuff he did in the action sequences with pulling out cartoon objects. Like they did more with that than they did with Penny
With the
Parker.
anime character, yeah. Um, but I mean, they all played off each other well. Seeing her in her
Yeah,
mech jumping around with the rest of them, that was pretty cool. And
I
then,
almost wish they would have used the actual Japanese Spider-Man. I'm the emissary from hell.
oh yeah, the
Calling in
Common
his
Rider
mech,
dude,
Leopardon, and all that.
yeah,
Because
or
like,
the Super Sentai Spider-Man, yeah. That'd be
that's what I'm talking about.
that'd be
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that would have been super awesome. Shit, you know I would have dug that. Oh my god, I used to watch that show when I was a kid. I didn't understand it. I was like, "What the? Why does he have a weird, bracelet? And
Yeah.
why is he shooting ropes instead of webs? And like, why has he got a mech and a
Yeah.
car and all that stuff? Like, I didn't get it, And then as I got older, I watched and I was like, "Holy crap, man! This is funny, but it's awesome." But yeah, the end fight is really cool. You really get to see everybody doing their thing, and then when Miles finally gets it, that's when it's like you almost want more.
Yeah, you do.
You want more because it's like he finally gets it, and he has the moment where, now he's a little bit more confident. You still feel like he may not get how serious the situation is, but you still get that. It's like he feels like Spider-Man. I guess that's the best way to put it. He just finally feels like Spider-Man, and he's not doing things exactly the same way that, it's not like they just said, hey, here's the black kid pretending to be Peter Parker as Spider-Man. They're like, here is a different dude who's donning a similar costume, and he's doing things differently, but you can see what he learned from all the different characters. But it was dope. When he takes on Kingpin, it's like, man, this is dope. This is quality. He even has his own moment of, he got his ass throttled and he has to get up because that's Spider-Man's thing. He gets
Yeah.
beat the fuck up, but he always gets back up. So he has his moment where Kingpin hits him with one of those haymakers and he has to actually try to get back up. And he struggles and then he gets back up. And his dad's rooting for him, and finally you're seeing him kind of in his own version of what Peter Parker as Spider-Man has been going through, and it's quality, man. It's quality. You kind of see why kids would really dig this movie because it really presents Spider-Man to you in a way that would make you like as a kid, it's like you're living out that fantasy somewhat. And then you're also seeing how difficult it is to be Spider-Man. Like, it's not some easy, simple situation. You have to go through some shit. to really be an effective Spider-Man. But
Yeah, man. And even at the very end, the message at the end again, anybody can be Spider-Man.
yeah,
It's almost like they were trying to tell all the haters out there, like, it's not relegated to just one specific type of person.
yeah,
It's supposed to be for everyone.
mm-hmm. And it worked. It worked well. I mean, if you weren't gonna see it, I think you should go see it.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, because this is one of those times where they really, really did the damn thing, and it was done in a way that made you feel more. It's like you're getting a close up. Three different ways, because you had two Peter Parkers and then you had Miles, but you're getting like a close up of what it is to be Spider-Man 100%. I really did dig the fight at Aunt May's. That was fun too.
Yeah, man, they destroyed that house.
And she forced them to go outside too. I was like, yeah, that's quality. But yeah, man, it's dope. It's definitely like an A+, 100% quality. There's nothing whack. The wackest thing is the fact that a Miles Morales movie has 5 other Spider-Men in it, and in this movie, it's not necessarily a minus. It's not a bad thing. And then there's the frame rate. That's the only thing that I didn't really dig. But the movie felt like a moving comic. I mean, they had thought bubbles and speech bubbles and the narration boxes and
and the shadows having the
4-color separation situation, yeah. And the fucking dot pattern on some of the coloring when they get up close on characters, like it just felt like so much like a moving comic. It was crazy, man. I don't understand how anyone couldn't see this and be like, wow, this is what comics feel like to the reader. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally what I felt from the direction of this film. I mean, the movie had 3 directors. It better have all this shit, done right. God, there was something else I was going to say, and I totally lost my train of thought. But the movie's quality. It's completely quality. It's worth wherever you get to check it out. Check it out. It's worth it.
Yeah, and definitely stay for the end credit scene because it's worth it.
See, I didn't get to see it. I didn't get to see the end credit scene. I'm gonna have to look it up when. Actually, the movie's out now, so I'll look it up on YouTube. Yeah. I'll probably find it. And I don't know. Do you want us to talk a little bit about Voltron, or you want to save it for another time?
Yeah, damn. Let's save it for another time.
I knew once we started talking about Spider-Man, we'd have a lot to say because, I mean, he's a character like I don't dig what they've been doing with him as of late because I feel like they've been dumbing him down for the mass audience, and the thing that they think is most interesting about the character is least interesting for me, and that's the high school time period. Like, that was the least. He was only in high school in the books for like part of an issue. Or maybe one issue, something like that. He wasn't in high school for that long during the course of these books. So it's surprising to me that that's what they keep on trying to do with him. It just feels kind of stupid. So,
I mean, he had to have been in high school for a while in the 60s.
Nah, in the 60s, the first issue, it's like it's part of the last. He graduates like a couple episodes later. Because it starts with him, I think he's in his senior year. And he's still not popular. He still doesn't have a bunch of friends. He's still a goof off, you know what I mean? And then shortly after that, when he goes to college, that's when things start to pop up. Because even back then, Stan Lee understood, if you're going to call him Spider-Man, he can't be 15 years old. What kind of bullshit is that? Where they try to, now a man is a 15-year-old? Like, get out of here. Like, he doesn't even, like, they had to make a new Marvel Legends figure to give you the impression that he's a kid. Like, because he's not a man. You know what I mean? Like, the body is that of a teenager. Like, a teenager in shape, but still smaller than a man. And then they completely, like, That's what they're pawning off as Spider-Man these days. Like, come on. Can we get Spider-Man? What's wrong with that? I don't understand. We were kids when we were watching Spider-Man and reading those books, and we wanted to be Spider-Man when we grow up. You know, making him younger doesn't really change that. And then they did it again with Miles. Miles is now Spider-Man. Only in the comics, though, they jump forward a little bit farther. Because I remember by the time he started jumping dimensions with Spider-Gwen, he was a little bit bigger.
Yeah, he's a little older, yeah. It's been like a couple years they jumped.
I dug that. Did you see the Mafex Miles?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting it. Yeah, I was like, because it's the adult version, but I was like, I'm still getting it.
Yeah. No, I
really do hope. I know Figure Arts won't do it, although I wish they would. But if an Amazing Yamaguchi version of Miles came out, I would get that too.
Oh, it's coming. It's got to be coming. And it'll probably look like the Spider-Verse version. It probably will look like this. Better than what Hasbro did. That bullshit. I saw that 2-pack the other day at Target, and I was so angry. I was like, are you really going to do this to people? You're literally selling the old school comic book version that you released a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Or a couple months. What, was like a year ago or something?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
And then now you're going to sell it as a brand new thing. It's not even related to. I don't even think his symbol looks right. Like his costume isn't legit like the one in this movie. The body type is not right because he's supposed to be smaller and skinnier. Same thing with Gwen. It's the Gwen with the classic Gwen Stacy head, and not the one from this with the hipster haircut and all that. You know, like they just so dumb. Meanwhile, you can buy the $10 figures that look exactly like the models in this movie. Because I bought Miles for Nico a couple months ago. But yeah, that's it for us. we're probably gonna do a video specifically about Voltron, because there is a lot to unpack with Voltron, because we've watched the entire series and it's a better ending to the series than what we got in the 80s. Because I don't think the 80s version had a definitive real end to it, because it was a culmination of a bunch of different TV shows that they cut together to make Voltron. This is one cohesive narrative. All the characters came from this story, belong in this story, and it was dope. And I love that they stuck to their guns. I have to say this before we go so that people will, pay attention for, when they listen to us talk about it later. I love how even after people bitched and moaned about Shiro being gay, they ended the whole series on the kiss with him and his dude. Yeah. And I was like,
I know they didn't have Nickelodeon to get in the way and tell them no.
Exactly. Well, I'm like, who gives a shit? Shiro was a dope character.
Well, I'm talking about like with Korra.
No, I know.
I guarantee you they would have done it in that.
No.
Nickelodeon,
I know.
Like, no.
I'm saying, like, who gives a shit if Shiro's gay? Like, really? Like, why is that? How does that change all the shit he did? It'd be like the way that, black folks get discredited by racist people. It's the same thing that homophobes are doing to this character. Oh, the original guy didn't do shit except talk. Like, I watched the show. I remember. He just sounded cool. I think the original guy Optimus was voiced by Peter Cullen, wasn't he?
I just remember the narration. I barely remember the very end of that series because I honestly don't remember Shiro.
He wasn't in it often. Yeah, I hated Sven.
That's all I remember.
Oh, I hated Sven so much. Oh, hated him, man. Yeah, where is Ramel? I hated him.
I thought it was so funny when they had that alternate universe version of Shiro, and he was talking like Sven.
Yeah. I think in the original show, I gotta look that shit up because I don't remember very much about Shiro back in the day. I think in the original one, Shiro didn't show up that often. He was in charge of the where is it? I'm pretty sure he was in charge of the. He was like the captain on one of the ships. I want to say he was in charge of the vehicle version, the vehicle team. I could be wrong. It's been so long, but
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember at all.
Keith Kogane.
And I got a bunch of those episodes on a VHS somewhere.
Yeah, I remember watching those. Your
Like,
VHS.
yeah.
Yeah, I think. Let's see. I don't. Yeah, they don't really talk about him. Yeah, I don't remember him like that. I don't really remember what he did. Wait, who was voice? Oh no, that was Hawkins. That was Hawkins was the guy, the Explorer crew. So where is what's his name? Shirogane. I don't see him. But anyway, I don't give a shit that he's gay. I just thought it was dope that like people complain about inclusion, and this show included everybody. It was like you could be red, you could be green, you could be purple, you could be gay, you could be straight, you could be bi, you could be a robot, you could be a fucking construct. You could exist in another time period as opposed to existing in this time period, and it was dope. It was just dope. Oh, Sven, huh? Oh, Sven in Japan. So
His name's Shiro.
is Shiro, yeah. And nobody liked Sven, so I don't know why all of a sudden we're gonna pretend like he was dope like that. Yeah, Sven was Shiro in Japan, and he was Sven in the U.S. Can you believe that? Holy shit! So the voice of Shiro is also the voice of Flint from G.I. Joe,
Oh, wow.
or Sven, I guess. The voice of Sven is Shiro. I mean, is God. It's Michael Bell, same guy
From the original?
from the original show. Yeah, the same guy
Wow.
who voiced Sven also voiced Flint. Holy shit.
Well, that's why he's a voice actor.
I know, right? God, that's awesome. But yeah. I don't understand why people have the issues they have with all this, and it's just stupid. So stupid. But anyway, yeah.
Because people think that these shows are made specifically for them and their socio-political views.
Yeah.
And nobody else.
It's true. It's true, and it's frustrating. It shouldn't be like that. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about with that show because I was thoroughly satisfied when it was done. Thoroughly. I was like, wow. I had issues. I had a couple issues. They're small. But overall, I was like, damn, that's fucking fitting. It was pretty epic. Like you said, they definitely watched Gurren Lagann.
Yeah, man.
They definitely did. But yeah, we'll get into more of that later. I kind of wish we had more time to do it now, but it's late. So, yeah, probably we'll do a separate video about Voltron in general. So, yep, as usual, that is our story, and we are sticking to it. And thanks for listening, and thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next video. So, peace outside.
Good night.